So I guess I will start with my news segment then.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, what I'm going to bring up, and I'm bringing this up first on the first episode of recording today because it's the thing I'm most excited to talk about.
Oh, okay.
Because it is a hybrid, what I've been watching recently, mini review, and a news segment about this thing.
Oh, okay.
Um, a new series came out last week that is all buzz right now. It is the most popular series on Prime currently. I don't know if you've been. We don't see the same things on the internet clearly,
Yeah.
but this is the number one streaming series on Prime, and it is the third most streamed thing on Prime ever.
It's a new show?
Yeah, or it might be the third highest streamed premiere or something. I don't know, but it is.
So it's not Invincible.
It just came out last week,
Man.
and I finished watching the 8 episodes that came out, I believe, 2 or 3 days ago.
So they dropped all at once?
Yeah, all 8 episodes dropped at once. This is a series based on what is one of my favorite video game franchises of all time. It
It's not a
is
Sega thing, is it?
no, it
Oh,
is
okay.
Fallout.
Fallout.
Fallout. So Fallout is like I said, it's one of my favorite video game series of all time. In our review special episodes, not to make this a special episodes, but we usually start with our history with the franchise. And this franchise is as important to me as many of the superhero franchises that we typically cover on the show. So I'll give my history with the franchise. For me, it started with Fallout 3, which was released in 2009. So I was in high school. I think I was a freshman in high school, like pretty freshman, sophomore kind of in high school.
What console does it come
Fallout
out on? Or is it like a computer one?
Fallout 3, I played it on Xbox 360, but it did also come out on PS3 and PC.
Okay.
And Fallout 3 was also no, actually. So, have you heard of Skyrim? The game Skyrim?
Yes.
So, obviously, that's the most popular Bethesda game that's the company that makes them that has ever come out. And that series also has games like Oblivion and Morrowind. Oblivion, which I think came out in like 2006 or 7. That was my first exposure to the Bethesda game system. And those are video games that and the reason I'm bringing this up is because Fallout 3 is the same. Like, if you were to play Skyrim and Fallout 3, they feel almost identical. Like, the game system is the same, essentially, with some tweaks, but they're different worlds. So Oblivion or Elder Scrolls 4 was my introduction to that game system. First-person RPG style games.
Oh, so
where
you don't see the character, you just see through their eyes.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because that kind of hasn't really been done much before that, where it was an RPG, but it was also FPS, where you're looking, and technically you can switch to third-person mode, but I've never found that works very well in these games. I think the first-person mode just feels more natural in these games. But it's usually like open world exploration, doing quests. And they have people who love these style of games know that they have their own particular quirks. They are kind of like, they are almost always highly unpolished compared to their competitors. But where they shine is how in depth and massive they are, and like how much dialogue and story is like packed into them. And so people usually kind of forgive that they're kind of buggy. The graphics are worse than other games that come out at the time. Like, you would look at it and think it's an ancient game, but it's like other games that came out in 2009 look way better than Fallout 3. But people kind of forgive it because of how like it's almost like they had to cut corners somewhere because of just how much is packed into these games. And they cut corners with graphics and it being a little buggy.
Do they do like updates? Like I know for like the latest Spider-Man game, they did an update to make Toby's suit look better.
Um n- they do updates to make it less buggy. They didn't really do any graphical updates, but part of that is because these games have really big modding communities on PC that kind of tons of people add their own mods. And I think there are some official mods as well. But I don't know. Personally, I don't even care. I like the charm of the way they turn out. I prefer if they crash less, but anyway, despite all that, they
That is a
are
perfect review for like
yeah,
cars too as
yeah,
well. Just
oh
like
yeah,
I love the new Honda Odyssey. I just wish they would crash
yeah.
less.
I would, yeah, I do wish that I was less mortally harmed by the car accident I got into when it failed.
We should throw those type of reviews on Amazon.
Yeah, yeah. But
It'd be nice if
anyway,
their seatbelts worked and their
yeah,
airbags would fill up.
yeah. Anyway, yeah, and when I was like 15 and I found Fallout 3, it was like a world like no other. It was so special to me. I had played few RPGs as deep and as unique and felt like Fallout 3 did. And it still holds a special place in my heart
What
as my
made you get it? Did
favorite.
you just get it just to get it, or had you heard reviews or something?
I think that this is what it was. I think that I was turned away from it for a little bit because I was under the impression that it was kind of just yet another kind of grim, dark gun FPS game. Uh, and I later found out that, and I don't like that kind of game typically, like Call of Duty and stuff is like my least favorite genre of game. But I later found out I think I was a big fan of Oblivion, which is a fantasy RPG, much more my style. And I think basically what I found out was, oh, Fallout 3 is literally just Oblivion reskinned with a post-apocalyptic theme. Like that's kind of what it is. uh, oh, and tangent into another recap. The reason why Fallout 3 is this way, and I'm not mentioning Fallout 1 or 2, is because Fallout 1 and 2 were games made, I believe, in the late 90s. And they were like
Oh, so there's a
old,
big gap.
yeah, and they were like old school RPGs. They were not first person, they were like top down. I talked a lot about in previous episodes the game Baldur's Gate. That's in a genre of like tactical old school RPGs where you're kind of looking down on a bird's eye view and things are turn based. The first two Fallout games are like that, and they're incredibly dated. I would say, polling most Fallout fans, I think the vast majority of Fallout fans don't even acknowledge the existence of those older games and consider Fallout 3 to be the start. And it is kind of a reboot
Kind of like
because,
Grand Theft Auto.
yeah,
A lot of fans consider the third one the true one, the
yeah,
true beginning.
but I am a nerd. I like games like Baldur's Gate. I typically like that style of game more than an FPS or action-based style game. So I love Fallout 1 and 2. I eventually went back and replayed them. I love them. They're not for everyone, but I love them. They're fantastic games. They're just totally different. So Fallout 3 was basically the reboot of the franchise, maybe almost 10 years later. Bethesda got the rights to it and decided to do something different with it. I take it they took their Oblivion Elder Scrolls game system and were like, let's do this other IP that we now have in this style. And it was a big hit. Fallout 3 was massive. At the same time, a different studio took that same system and made a new story called Fallout New Vegas, which is kind of, like an unofficial Fallout 4. It's kind of Fallout 4, but there's a Fallout 4 that came out later. Um, and New Vegas is the fan favorite. And also polling fans, people would say Fallout New Vegas is the best Fallout game. I have a special place in my heart for Fallout 3 because of the story I just told, and that's my favorite. But I can acknowledge that New Vegas might be in some ways objectively the best, and it is my second favorite. Um, but yeah, it is a story of uh pretty much, yeah, in every game you are a vault dweller. There is a it is a story about a nuclear apocalypse that happens in 2077, where there is a war and America is bombed out the wazoo across the entire country with tons
Oh
and tons of
wow.
nuclear bombs, causing all of America to be completely covered in radiation. Some people are lucky enough because of this, company called Vault Tech that makes these vaults underground and sells them to people um, to go hide away from the nuclear war, run in and get underground before the radiation hits you. And the plan is to live several generations, like 200 years underground, and then go up and repopulate the earth when it's safe, kind of thing. Which obviously implies that, more privileged people are going to be having access to these vaults while other people are left behind. But you do, in every game, take the role of someone who is like 200 years post this apocalypse happening. There's been 2 centuries of radiation and society building in this post apocalyptic hellscape of America. And you are someone who has several generations later been born and lived your entire life in a vault. And something happens depending on the in Fallout 3, it's your dad, something happened and your dad is gone and you need to go find him out in the wasteland. So there's some call to action in every game that, like, you need to leave the vault. You've never experienced the real world before and you need to go interact with this crazy world out there as a sheltered vault dweller and see what horrors lie out there. And so it is obviously a post-apocalyptic themed franchise, but it's also got this like 50s 60s retro futuristic kind of thing where like it's sci-fi in that there are there's advanced technology that exists, but there's some justification of like the stunting of like society because of it doesn't matter what the justification is, but for fun, the technology is like the way we imagine technology in the 50s and 60s. So it's like helper robots that are like, how can I help you today, ma'am? Like, it's like hovercrafts or like laser guns. Like it's like like a pulpy comic book from like the 50s that it like that's what kind of sci-fi it is, fused with like a Mad Max gritty, a post-apocalyptic thing. So I think the thing that makes Fallout so special for a lot of people is that the theming of it is just impeccable. It's just so fun because it's very dark, but then it's lightened by this very like whimsical theming of the retro futuristic elements. And then when you got like New Vegas and some of the ones that take place in the West, it's that combined with like Western cowboy kind of themes. And so it's a very entertaining, great world building. And I've been drawn to it for years because of that. All of this explanation applies to this show as well. So I don't know when it would have been like first rumored that this show existed, but of course, like, I'm not going to overly anticipate a video game adaptation of something. They almost never turn out.
Yes.
The exception and the reason why it was like, okay, this could turn out is because we had The Last of Us recently, which was proof that you can do an amazing like mini series type thing or TV show. I shouldn't say mini series because I think both of these are getting a season 2. But
Yeah.
you
By the way, before you go on,
yeah.
do you know about the controversy of The Last of Us Part 2?
Um no, I would not
Okay,
say. And
then
by
whatever
part
you
2, do you
do,
mean
don't
season
look
2?
up The Last of Us Part 2
Okay.
because you'll be very spoiled.
Okay.
I mean, it's
Well,
as big a spoiler as you could possibly get.
gotcha. Okay. I guess I won't look into it then. I don't know how we could mean, but I mean the thing, and this is another important note when talking about the Fallout show, with The Last of Us, it is the story of the games just depicted, like adapted into a show. In Fallout, uh, it is not adapting any story of the games. It is imagining a story in the Fallout world. So, like, for example, Fallout 3 takes place in a post apocalyptic Washington, D.C., where the open world is wandering around Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area. New Vegas is obviously post apocalyptic Las Vegas. Fallout 4 is post apocalyptic Boston. Um, this is post apocalyptic LA. Um, so it is a new story set in a new area. And the first thing, so I saw the trailers to this, and I think a lot of people were like, oh, this might be really good, but they're just trailers. Let's not
Add
get,
that question mark to
yeah.
the end. That's an important thing to add.
Yeah, it's just they're just trailers. Let's wait and see.
Whoa, guys,
And
don't get too
yeah,
hyped now.
yeah. But I was watching the trailer and I was like, oh, this is like kind of really exciting now. And I went and replayed all the games, basically, not through and through, but I picked up all the games. I did beat Fallout 3 again, and I got into this Fallout zone the past like month or so. And it released last week. And if it's not obvious from all of this, it's a great show. It's surpassed my expectations, even though I was personally hyped for it. Um, it definitely will go down as one of the best like video game adaptations in that category of The Last of Us. Where like, look, this can be done really well. It has rave reviews, like 93% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh wow.
It yeah, again, like check with me at the end of the year and see if this is my favorite TV item of the year. It's like it's a 5 star it's a 5 star series for me. They nailed it. They absolutely nailed it. Um and so I guess I'll try and do as many of a review as possible. It starts off with a bang, pun not, but maybe also intended, where we see the setup for the nuclear apocalypse, and it like locks you in right away. We're seeing 2077 or whenever it is. We're seeing a moment when the bombs go off, and the stakes are like so. It's just so well done. It makes you feel instantly pulled into the screen to watch the origin of this world until it flashes 219 years later, where we meet our there are kind of like 3 or 4 main characters. If you had to pick one as the main character, it would be Lucy, the vault dweller, who is going to go on this adventure. And so the pilot with or first episode, I should say, is kind of just introducing each of the main players in this. There are kind of, like I said, 3, maybe 4 main characters, and getting a glimpse of each of them. The show really picks up episode 2 once all that is set up. But yeah, it's a great start meeting the main character. Lucy eventually leads to her needing to leave the vault and experience the harsh and irradiated outside world for the first time. And like I said, post-war LA. And I gotta say, like, she's my favorite part of the show. She's an amazing character. And I was always slightly less interested whenever a separate character plot without her was going on, and was excited when it got back to what was going on with her, because like part of what makes Fallout feel like Fallout is, being a vault dweller and interacting with the world for the first time. And the way it's played is just really great. It feels believable to a degree that the over topness of this world can feel believable. Like, just that she's naive, thinks that she has things kind of figured out, but the world out there is just nothing like she's experienced before. And so she's in this position where she's kind of learning that she needs to learn a lot about this world, and that everything that she learned and that her life was built around for all these years isn't necessarily true, and the world out there is not exactly how it was portrayed to her. Um, and so for that reason, like, definitely the creation of that character is one of the best parts of the show. Then our other main character, Maximus, is also great. He's a little harder to be endeared to, because he's a character who he's in an upbringing where it appears he was kind of orphaned and sort of taken in by this group called the Brotherhood of Steel. And they are like a very like militaristic group in the post-apocalypse. So this is a guy who lived and grew up always in the post-apocalyptic upper world. And the Brotherhood of Steel are like bringing order to this world. And they sort of have this like extreme religious sect kind of vibe to them, where like they have strict rules. Like, you need to like serve our heroes who are like helping protect this, and one day you might make it into being a brotherhood, wearing the power armor that they wear. It almost like there are the knights who the lackeys help, and that they are the honorable people who are truly helping the wasteland. And like you're growing up feeling like your biggest honor would to one day be one of these knights.
One
And
day.
yeah. And so he's kind of in this position where he wants to be a knight more than anything, and maybe kind of finding that this extremely strict like shelter, like, and it's interesting because in weird way, both Lucy, who literally was sheltered in a shelter and has not seen the outside world, and lived with, there are a lot of like incest jokes at the beginning, because their population is dwindling. It's like a small population of people who uh you know isn't growing fast enough, and there's obviously some issues there with like not having that many options. Um so they're very literally extremely sheltered, and she's going out there naive. And in this other weird way, Maximus is also extremely extraordinarily sheltered, because he's in this like religious cult almost his entire life that was kind of formed by the apocalyptic conditions. So it's interesting that both of these characters are like kind of equally sheltered, but in different ways. And you're kind of, it's fun to see him start to break out of that. Like, he's in some ways a less enjoyable character to start, because he's so dedicated to this cause, but as you see him like break out of his shell more and more, that's really nice to see. And then the fan favorite character for a lot of people is played by Walton Goggins, the Ghoul, or Cooper, I think is his real name. He's a fantastic time. He is interesting because he is that original opening scene where we see everything go down. He's in that scene. He's over 200 years old. He survived the blast. Wow. Because in the world of Fallout, there are what people call ghouls, which is kind of a derogatory term, but they're called that because they're people who have survived in the radiation and are so horribly irradiated that they basically look like zombies. So this is a guy whose skin is kind of like almost like melted wax, like gone. He looks like a zombie. He has no nose. And something about this radiated like advancement in some way, like this mutating caused by radiation, makes it so that they can essentially just live on as long as they find the special like medicine that lets them continue living on, or they would also die if they got their head blown off or something. But so he has lived like over 200 years, but is deeply uh deformed and radiated. And he sort of is a as an actor back in the day before the war, he played cowboys on TV. But in this post-apocalyptic world, he has kind of become a cowboy. He wears a cowboy hat, kind of talks like a cowboy. He's really good with guns. Um, and he's kind of like an anti-hero vibe, and he kind of plays this role of being like, "Oh, Lucy, you're naive. You don't know how to survive out here, but I'll teach you a thing or two about how to survive out here." But their goals don't always align. So sometimes it becomes like an antagonistic thing. Sometimes they're helping each other. It's a great dynamic. So those three main characters are all great. The reason I said 3 or 4 main characters is because Lucy's brother back in the vault, we also get to see after Lucy leaves the vault that there's some conspiracy going on in the vault. And so her brother Norm is kind of this like just really smart whiz kid guy who's a little antisocial, but he starts to kind of investigate that like something fishy is going on in this place that I've lived in and been sheltered in my entire life. Like beyond the obvious, like there's something really fishy going on in here. And those are all some of my favorite scenes too, because there's a lot of intrigue in those scenes. And so that was how all the successful parts of the characters, one of the things that makes the show great, and how they interact with the world. The other thing I loved that was super effective in this is Fallout has always been an inherently extremely political franchise. Like you're talking about war and like a corporation that like creates these vaults for people to live in, and the societies that make up the world and the different the factionism. Like it's obviously inherently political. Gamer brain people. I like video games obviously, but I do hate gamers. The gamer community needs to be oppressed, frankly. There needs to be laws that oppress against gamers. They're a depraved people. But I do love video games, but not gamers.
I'm not with them.
Yeah,
I'm completely separate.
I'm not like other gamers. I'm normal.
Yes.
But there's a type of gamer that's just like, what the heck? They made Fallout political?
Oh my God. Do not get me started on
know.
people who didn't understand X-Men.
Oh my God, that's such a good example.
It was like guys, did you get any of the subtext? Like,
I know. Yeah. That's
no,
exactly.
It's just about fighting robots, right?
I know. That's exactly the situation with Fallout, because the very small percentage of people that don't like this show are the people who are saying Fallout went woke, basically. And
yeah, when you hear people throw around the word woke, it means it's time to tune them out.
Yeah, that's time to not listen anymore. And so those are the gamer brained people I'm talking about. But they were very upset when the Fallout TV show had the audacity to actually say something when it deals with a corporation that has rich people move in and live away from everyone, that plans to recolonize and civilize the earth, and actually acknowledging the politics behind that, and like the powers that be that created these corporations that ruled the world essentially at the time the bombs dropped, and how they were incentivized to not want peace to happen and for the war to continue, because they had if you have a company where you're selling people living underground to get away from the nuclear war, the last thing you want is for there to not be nuclear war. You're incentivized.
You fear peace.
Yes. And so you might lobby the government to make sure that the war continues. Um, episode like 6 or so, like there's a huge like bomb drop. No offense, but bomb drop conversation. Um, that kind of reveals a bunch of things that I won't spoil, but it's kind of like this very uh political conversation, seeing behind the scenes, and it's just some of the best writing in the whole show. That was one of my favorite scenes in the whole show. Is like it's this scene where there's basically a boardroom of the different big CEOs of all the different major companies, and they're having a conversation about like how do we make more money, and it's like such a damning conversation. It's one of the best scenes in the entire show. But then like there's a lot of back in the like the ghoul in this former life, I think his name is Cooper as the actor. He's in LA in the in the industry, and there are a lot of people like trying to unionize and stuff. And there's a lot of this talk of like they're calling the people trying to unionize and get rights communists. And like and because he's like America's favorite actor, he kind of is in that role of like wanting to believe that the American values are good, and that capitalism is good and stuff. And so he is kind of like a little like, yeah, he talks to a guy at one point and he's sort of like, what, are you going to those communist meetings? I mean, come on, why are you doing that? And this guy's explaining to him like, come on, you're better to that. These aren't communist meetings. You should go to one sometime. And it's because it was just like, and that it was, and this does reflect an actual point in history where workers' rights organizers were kind of lumped into like Red Scare propaganda and called communists.
I think
So
like the 50s.
Yeah, for sure. Like it was like McCarthyism, just like people
Yeah.
being like called communists, and that was basically just like something a character at one point literally says like communist is just what they call people who aren't insane. And all of that is like great commentary in this show. Very interesting to watch all of that unfold in this show. And obviously kind of contentious and upsets some people. But
who will tweet about it for many times throughout the week.
Yes, they will, and
so
they
watch it, rewatch it, and be like, I hate it so much.
Yeah.
Boost the ratings.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Number one go on the platform right now. So good luck tweeting that out of reality. So that's all amazing, completely well done. But yeah, also the other note I have is we talk about a lot like series that rely on stupid jokes and one-liners throughout, like in like where Marvel often fails lately. And Fallout is a series where they could have easily fallen into that trap because it is a series that inherently, even though it is dark, it is a post-apocalyptic hellscape. It is, maybe first and foremost sci-fi, post-apocalyptic dystopia, and all of these things, but it is also comedy. The dark humor of like even just like the UI of the game has the smiling thumbs up character who's like kind of just, let me help you out, this is your Pip-Boy. And there's just like kind of an eerie, like retro-futuristic, like toxic positivity kind of vibe. Like in this hellscape, seeing a billboard with a guy smiling with his thumb up it's there's kind of this dark humor to the whole series.
Yeah.
And so they could have easily, and I would say maybe could have been my biggest worry, is like, are they going to capture that balance of the humor being subtle, like not in your face one liner, like wink and a nod, like the writer is proud because they wrote that really funny joke kind of thing. But subtle humor that is kind of a dark humor where you're just kind of laughing that something this ridiculous and cheeky and campy is happening amongst all this horribleness. Um, and I think they captured that perfectly. I mean, the humor is still campy, but it's more like a, uh, you know, hearkening to the retro futuristic style that they're going to, like those old low budget movies, campy. Which also brings me to a warning to anyone. I recommend everyone watch it. It was shockingly gory, but
Oh,
in like a B horror movie, campy gory kind of thing to me because it was so over the top. In fact, in the games there is something. Every level you unlock a new ability. One of the abilities you can unlock is called Bloody Mess. And in the games, what that means is from now on, when you deal a critical hit, the enemy just explodes in like a
oh.
pile of gore. So it's almost like a cheat code kind of thing where the game gets this like dark humorous like over the top gore element that you don't have to turn on, but it is something you can turn on in the Fallout games. Is
There's
called
something
Bloody Mess.
similar to that in Red Dead Redemption. There's a certain gun you can get, and if you shoot someone, they just explode.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's what this is. Is like either the limb that you aim at or the entire body just completely blows up and flies everywhere.
Yes.
Um People are joking that the characters in this have the bloody mess perk turned on. It is genuinely sometimes like it is like a comic booky over the top gory violence that would not be for everyone. And I was surprised they went there as I was watching it because I mean, I swear there's like someone grabbing someone's head and it blows up and like it's so over the top.
It's like that scene in Threat Level Midnight when Toby
Oh,
gets shot.
that really is kind of what this feels like.
It was expensive, but it was essential for the story.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the big scenes when you first meet like the ghoul, when the ghoul and Lucy first meet, and it's in the trailer, which makes it is one of the things that made it a really good trailer. Is this meeting for the first time, Lucy and the ghoul, and seeing their dynamic kind of form for the first time. And in that scene, the ghoul just kind of attacks everyone who's trying to get at him. And he ends up almost slaughtering everyone in the town square doing it. And it is like literally he's just pointing, shooting, someone's head explodes. It's really like a B horror movie level of gore that again I was surprised it went there, but it does feel like the games. But yeah, yeah, as far as the humor all went, Fallout can be jokey, but the games have their own subtle humor that I think was captured well in the series. All in all, 5 stars.
Oh, yes.
Out of 5. And so that's my mini, medium, not so mini kind of mini review. And the bit of news is days, maybe we actually as of yesterday, so a little less than a week after the release of the show, they announced it is returning for season 2.
Oh, yes.
Which it wasn't necessarily going to. They did not officially purchase another season, but now they have. And that's about all we know. But as it was starting to get towards the end of season 1, I didn't know, if is it an 8-episode miniseries? Is it gonna have a season 2? I don't know what the show is. I didn't know that anything like that going in. As it was starting to get towards the end, like there's like 20 minutes in the last episode. I mean, it was just sort of like, oh no, nothing is going. It's sort of like an Across the Spider-Verse when there's 20 minutes left, and you're like, oh,
it's not gonna get wrapped up.
This movie is not wrapping up. It really felt like that, where it was just like, we really have 15 minutes left in this entire thing. But the finale is one of the best episodes, but it was like, okay, there literally needs to be a season 2 now. And I don't know if there's going to be one. So I was really worried because there could have easily not been one. But luckily, apparently these days, things need to be the most successful thing on the entire platform for it to get another season. But there is another season coming. I hope it's soon enough. I hope they start filming this year, but we don't know much, but it was
Well,
announced
it's a
officially.
streaming show, so that means you probably have to wait 2 years or something.
Yeah.
Remember the good old days when there'd be 22 episodes and then like right away you get the next season?
Yeah. I wish it was just every year. Like you could kind of count on it being on next fall.
Yeah.
Um, I wish. And I also said like there's definitely like a cliffhanger that the last episode, episode 8, kind of ends on that is like a big reveal, especially for fans. If fans haven't watched it, you should watch it and see how it leaves us at the end of season 8, because it's gonna get everyone really excited for season 2. Because yeah, it basically is a cliffhanger that is like, this is what we're doing in season 2.